All right, so time to move on to our next question from David. David's in Smackover, and he asks, are interest rates going to continue to rise? And if so, should I invest or save more money to reduce loans I may need in the near future? Okay, so let's tackle the interest rate part of that question first, and then we'll get into David's individual situation. Are interest rates going to continue to rise? Ultimately, we don't know. But let's kind of look at what's happening right now. As we record this on April 12th, inflation data was just released for the month of March, and we are seeing inflation cool. Consumer prices in March were up just 0.1% month over month. That was the smallest monthly gain since December, and prices were up 5% March over March, so a 12-month, year-over-year marking. That's the lowest annual growth rate since May of 2021. Energy prices are down. Food at home fell in March, so that was the first monthly decline in prices since mid-2020. So the data is suggesting that inflation is cooling off, and you could argue that it is a result, or at least partially due, to the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. The idea here, they've been on a tear, by the way. Nine straight meetings, they have raised the benchmark interest rate, the short-term borrowing rate in this country. So that has now ticked up to about 5%. So that it is interesting to note, our friend Ryan Dietrich actually put this out a while back, that usually the rate hiking cycle, that is hard to say.
Easy for you to say.
The rate hiking cycle ends when the interest rate catches up to or matches inflation. So we have now entered a time with this data today that it's about equal. And for inflation now, it could obviously tick the other way when we get our next bout of data. So the Federal Reserve's interest rate hiking cycle, for all intent and purposes, is coming to an end. When? We don't know. Probably this year, but we don't know. The question is, will they leave them where they are for a while? Will they start to lower them? And we just don't know the answer to that. But are interest rates going to continue to rise? Maybe, but we do see a cooling off in the future. However, in this really the conditions we are in, I will say, David, that, and I think I've said this on the show before, that I think I have bought more CDs for clients in the last 15 months than I ever have as being a financial advisor, because rates are attractive, right?
Yeah,
they're up. You can get 4.5%, 5% on a 12-month CD right now. So it is alluring to say, hey, I want to invest in something safe. And I don't know if that's what David's asking. He just says, should I invest or save more money to reduce loans I may need in the near future?
So there's really several points to this that we need to cover. Let's talk about investing as compared to, like you mentioned, we've done a lot of CD work recently, but we don't really consider that investing.
Right.
That is your safe money that you need to have accessible in a short-term period of time. And while you can get obviously a better return on that than you can for it to just be sitting in cash somewhere, there is a difference between saving and investing, because even though getting close to 5% on a CD sounds good relative to what we have seen in recent years, when you compare it to inflation, again, it's really not that great. And so it is a safe money move, a short-term money move, not an investment move.
Right.
So he's asking, should I invest? Should I save more money to reduce loans? I'll tell you, this to me is a stage of life question.
Yeah.
And we don't really know where David is in his stage of life. But David, I'll tell you the story from my family. Back in the 80s, there was a time when you could get CDs that were paying 15%. Now, if you're getting 15% earnings on a CD, that means that whoever is borrowing money and is paying interest is also paying double-digit interest rates at that point. And when this happened in the 80s, it was a time where my grandfather and my father were in two very different stages of life. My grandfather was retired, and he was enjoying the fool out of some 15% CDs. My father was not retired. He was a farmer who was still acquiring land, and you acquire that through borrowing and getting a loan from the bank, and over time you pay that off. And so he was paying high interest. And I remember him just literally just sweating it out, going, I don't know, this is good for my daddy, but it's horrible for me. So, but the end of that story is Dad made lots of wise decisions along the way, and in spite of those high interest rates that he was paying to acquire land at the time, at this point, all that land is paid for. It belongs to our family. We're good. But there were some sacrifices that we had to make those things happen. And I will say, if it had been a car loan rather than like land, which was to a farmer, his investment, that's what he was going to invest in long term, we didn't ever have a car payment. And that, we might not have had one in a good interest rate environment, but my family never chose to do that. So I think it is very relative to what types of loans are we talking about. Is it something that is going to move you forward in life, or is it just debt because it's debt?
You talk about recency bias. When you say 15% on a loan, it makes that 6% mortgage not seem so high, right? If you're getting a mortgage now. So many variables with that. I would say this, though, the loan matters, right? If you've got a 0% introductory offer, that's one thing. But if you're in something variable that was at a low rate 18 months ago that has now gone up, yes, I think that a portion of your plan should be to get that loan paid off as soon as possible. I'm assuming by David's question that when he says, should I invest or save more money, he has the availability to do that, right? So we've got some margin set up, which is great. But if we don't have a plan, then we need to let's check the boxes. And there's kind of an order here, right?
There is. And there are some things that we would encourage you to pay down sooner. But like if we're talking about should I invest for retirement or pay off my house sooner, then again, kind of relative to your stage of life, we can't focus on paying off the house and then get to the point of retirement and go, okay, now we need to invest, because we don't really have time on our side anymore. That house payment is going to, over time, pay itself off. So if you're not on track for retirement, then we would encourage you to focus on, let's be sure that that's taken care of. Because, Scott, one of the things that we've not even talked about here is the fact that for most people, the time when they retire is really not their decision. They think it's going to be, but because of their health or the health of somebody else or whatever's going on at work, that date winds up getting moved up for a lot of people. So we really want to be sure that in this overall decision that David is making, that the focus on retirement is part of your prioritization.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to put that off. There is something called a catch-up contribution with the employer plans, but we don't really want to wait till we're 50 to try to catch up. That should be part of your plan on your radar right now. And I would think as a general rule, even before you get to the planning process, if you have an employer plan at work, you should be contributing enough to at the very least, get the employer match, because that's free money. So if you divert your dollars away from that match to be able to pay off debt or to park it into a cash account or even a CD, you're really losing ground. So you want to get the employer match square one for sure, and don't take away from that to reduce debt or to park money in cash.
Absolutely. So again, just kind of a question about, what's your stage of life? What do those priorities need to be? And whether those loans that you're talking about potentially acquiring, whether that's something that would move you forward or not.